I sit on the balcony of a small cafe perched in the heart of the city, sipping an espresso that still carries the warmth of the roaster, a faint steam curling upward like a whispered secret. Below me, the streets bustle, hurried footsteps clack against the pavement, murmured conversations blend into a low hum, a symphony of chaos I've grown to love. It's late afternoon, March 13th, 2025, and the sky is streaked with gold, the kind of light that makes even the grayest corners of this concrete jungle shimmer. My fingers rest lightly on the porcelain cup, the heat seeping into my skin, grounding me. An afternoon like any other, or so it seems. My phone vibrates against the wrought iron table, a sharp buzz cutting through the hum. The screen flashes a name, James, and I stare at it for a few seconds, a strange sense of unease creeping in, slow and cold, like a shadow stretching across the floor. James Carter, my husband of 12 years, co-founder of Mitchell Ventures, the man who thinks he knows me better than I know myself. I press answer, lifting the phone to my ear, and his voice comes through, sharp and odd, the way a blade sounds when it's unsheathed. Daria, he says, and there's something in the way he lingers on my name. Too deliberate, too heavy. I'm calling to tell you something. I don't respond. I wait. The city pulses below, a taxi horn blaring, a street vendor shouting about fresh pretzels. But here on this balcony, it's just me and the weight of his pause. My eyes trace the golden streaks stretching long shadows over the road, and I feel it. The shift, the moment before everything changes. I want a divorce, he says finally, the words blunt, dropping like stones into still water. I let them ripple through the silence, my breath steady, my grip on the cup unfaltering. He's expecting something, a gasp, a plea, maybe a crack in my voice. But I give him nothing. Not yet. The espresso cools slightly in my hand, the city hums on, and I tilt my head, listening, waiting for the rest. Because with James, there's always more. He doesn't wait long to fill the silence. James never could stand it. I've sold the company, he says, his tone now thick with the confidence of a man who's just closed a deal he thinks unbeatable. Nicole and I are leaving to start over. Nicole. The name lands like a spark on dry grass. Nicole Evans, 34, all sharp edges and sharper ambition, the mistress he assumed I was too blind to see. I've known about her for months. Late-night texts he thought he'd hidden, expense reports for dinners I never ate, a red dress I glimpsed once in his car. But I say nothing, letting his words hang there, smug and heavy, while I decide not to feel, only to act. The espresso sits untouched now, a thin film forming on its surface, and I gaze out at the city, the evening sun dipping lower, casting the buildings in a fiery glow. Congratulations, I say, my voice light as air, almost a whisper, and on the other end of the line I hear his breath catch. Confusion, maybe, or the first crack in his certainty. He laughs then, a triumphant, smug sound that grates against my calm. I didn't think you'd take it this easily, he says, and I can picture him, 42 years old, leaning back in his office chair, tie loosened, that grin he wears when he thinks he's outsmarted everyone. You do realize, Daria, you have nothing left. The company's sold, and I own the majority of the assets. I glance at my watch. 4:47 p.m. Just a few more minutes. Is that what you think? I ask, my tone steady, a thread of steel woven through it. He nearly bursts into laughter, the sound tinny through the phone. Of course, everything's done. My lawyers have taken care of it all. I hope you won't make this difficult. Won't try to fight for something that's already lost. You know the law isn't on your side. The city below shifts into dusk, headlights flickering on like stars, and I smile slightly, not for him, but for me. He thinks he's holding all the cards. He has no idea I've been shuffling the deck this whole time. I hang up before he can react, the line going dead with a soft click. and in that moment, a smirk curls at the corner of my lips. Small, private, mine. The cafe buzzes around me, a waiter clinking dishes, a couple laughing at the next table, but I'm already somewhere else. My mind racing ahead. I leave a crisp 10 on the table and step into the cool air, the city wrapping around me like an old friend. My phone buzzes again as I slide into my car. A text from Ethan Brooks, 45, my lawyer, and the one man I trust with my life. It's done, it reads. He can't sell what he no longer owns. Relief washes over me, sharp and sudden, like an invisible chain snapping in two. James thought he was the one controlling the game. He has no idea I have been dealing the cards for months. The engine hums to life, and I pull onto the street, the golden light bleeding into dusk, the skyline glowing strangely beautiful this evening. He thinks he can walk away, take everything I've built, leave me with nothing but a divorce decree and a smug grin. He's wrong. I've been watching, waiting, planning, every move he made, every lie he told, I've turned it into my weapon. I drive toward the mansion we once called home, the stone-paved driveway waiting ahead, its shadows stretching long under the fading sun. James will be there, lounging in his favorite chair, convinced he's won. He has no clue that while he was plotting his betrayal with Nicole, I was already writing the ending, one where he loses everything, and I rise higher than ever. The city fades behind me, headlights cutting through the twilight, and I feel it. A triumphant undercurrent, quiet but unshakable. This isn't over, it's just beginning. The mansion looms ahead as I pull into the driveway, its stone facade bathed in the last gasps of dusk. A place that once felt like home, but now stands as nothing more than a stage for what's about to unfold. I step through the heavy wooden doors, the rhythmic clicks of my heels echoing through the silent space, a sound that cuts sharper than any words I could say. Inside, the air is thick with the scent of polished oak and the faint tang of red wine, James's signature. There he is, exactly where I knew he'd be, lounging in his favorite armchair, swirling a glass in his hand like a king on a throne he doesn't deserve. Beside him, Nicole stands by the window, arms crossed, her tight red dress a stark slash of color under the chandelier's warm glow. The confidence she once carried so effortlessly has frayed at the edges. I can see it in the way her fingers twitch, the way her eyes flicker toward me. James's lips curl into a condescending smile the moment he spots me, his head tilting slightly as if appraising a defeated opponent. "Daria, you're finally home," he says, his voice dripping with satisfaction, a tone I've heard 100 times when he thinks he's closed a deal or broken someone. "I assume you've had time to think things over." I don't rush to answer. Instead, I place my bag on the table with deliberate care, the soft thud of leather against wood punctuating the silence. And take a seat across from him, my posture relaxed, but my gaze steady. He's expecting tears, a scream, something to feed his ego. But I've never been one to give him what he wants. Not tonight, not ever. The chandelier hums faintly overhead, casting shadows that dance across his smug face. And I let the moment stretch, my calm a weapon he doesn't yet understand. This isn't his victory lap. It's mine. I reach into my briefcase, pulling out a thick stack of documents, and place them on the table with a decisive thud that makes Nicole flinch. James narrows his eyes, glancing at the papers, then back at me, his grin faltering just enough to notice. "What is this?" he asks, his voice strained, the first hint of uncertainty creeping in. I intertwine my fingers, offering him a calm smile that doesn't reach my eyes. "The truth," I say, my tone light but edged with steel, "and I think you should read it before you continue your performance." He hesitates, then picks up the stack, flipping through the first few pages. Shareholder agreements, signatures, dates, and I watch as the color drains from his face, the wine glass stilling in his hand. Nicole shifts uneasily, her gaze darting between us, her red dress suddenly too bright, too loud in the dimming room. According to the agreement we signed 5 years ago, I begin, reading slowly from a single sheet. I slide toward him. No sale or transfer of shares can occur without the approval of all primary stakeholders. I pause, locking eyes with him. And as you can see, I now hold the majority stake, 60%. James blinks, his mouth opening then closing, as if the words refuse to form. "That's impossible," he mutters, his voice a hoarse whisper. "I own 55% of the shares." I shake my head, cutting him off with a faint tilt of my head. "You used to own 55%. But while you were busy with your personal affairs," I glance at Nicole, her face paling, "I quietly acquired the rest from other investors." A heavy silence fills the room, thick and suffocating, and I lean back in my chair, letting it settle. Nicole finally speaks, her voice wavering, losing its usual sharpness. "James," she says, stepping closer, panic spreading across her features. He doesn't look at her. His eyes are locked on me, hard and searching. I tilt my head again, my smile widening just a fraction. "Looks like he told you exactly what you wanted to hear, Nicole." She shakes her head, stepping back, her heels clicking faintly against the hardwood. And I see it, the moment she realizes she's boarded a sinking ship. James grips the papers tighter, knuckles whitening, but I stay still, my calm unshaken. He thought he'd outplayed me. He's only just starting to see how wrong he was. I retrieve another set of documents from my briefcase, placing them gently in front of him, the rustle of paper loud in the stillness. "But this is where things get interesting," I say, my voice slow but razor-sharp, each word deliberate. "Do you remember the $1,200,000 that mysteriously disappeared from the company's internal investment fund?" James freezes, his jaw clenching, and Nicole's gasp is soft but audible, a crack in her crumbling facade. "Or those contracts you signed with a shell consulting firm in Hong Kong?" I lean forward slightly, my tone dropping to ice-cold precision. "That's called financial fraud, James." I pull out another stack, sliding it across the table. Bank records, transaction logs, emails, and watch his eyes widen, the smugness draining away like water through a sieve. "I have records of every suspicious transaction you've made over the past 3 years," I continue, my voice steady, unrelenting. "There's enough evidence here to trigger a full-scale investigation by the SEC and IRS. And guess what?" I pause, letting the weight sink in, my gaze never leaving his. "I already sent a copy to Ethan this morning." James shoots to his feet, slamming his fist onto the table, the wine glass tipping and spilling red across the wood, a fitting stain. "You dare," he starts, but I stand too, cutting him off with a single raised hand. "Dare to do what, James? Let you start over with Nicole while burning everything behind you?" My words are calm, measured, but they slice through his rage. "Did you really think I was that naive?" Nicole steps back again, her breath hitching, and before James can respond, she grabs her purse, her movements frantic. "You lied to me," she nearly screams, her voice trembling with desperation. "You promised me everything would be fine." She doesn't wait for his reply. Her heels clatter toward the door, and it slams shut behind her, the sound reverberating through the silent space. James stands there, his face contorted in a mix of rage and despair, the spilled wine pooling around the papers. I shrug, picking up the final stack and setting it down with a soft tap. "Tomorrow, the board will hold an emergency meeting," I say, my tone almost gentle now. "And you won't need to attend. You're out." He stares at me, still unable to process the collapse, and I turn toward the door, my heels clicking once more. This isn't just a win, it's the end of his game and the start of mine. I step into my office, the door clicking shut behind me, sealing out the night as city lights reflect off the floor-to-ceiling glass like a constellation trapped in a mirror. The glow from my computer screen flickers steadily, lines of data scrolling across the monitor. Numbers, transactions, emails, all systematically extracted and displayed. A digital net I've been weaving for over a year. I settle into my chair, the leather cool against my skin, and take a slow sip of wine, the rich taste grounding me as I open an encrypted file. A long password, 16 characters, alphanumeric, uncrackable, unlocks the system, and the screen floods with evidence. $3,800,000 siphoned from Mitchell Ventures' internal investment fund, funneled into anonymous accounts I've traced to tax havens, the Cayman Islands, Switzerland, Singapore. Phantom contracts bloom next, hundreds of thousands paid to consulting firms that don't exist. Their address is nothing but P.O. boxes in Hong Kong. My fingers hover over the keyboard, steady and sure as I click on a file, an audio recording extracted from the company's security system, a little gift from my cybersecurity days. James's voice spills out, clear and unmistakable. We'll keep pulling money from the company in small amounts. No one will notice. Once the sale goes through, we'll have enough to leave and no one will be able to trace it. I hit pause, the words hanging in the air, and a smirk tugs at my lips. He forgot one critical detail. I'm not just his wife. I'm the expert who built the systems he thought he could manipulate. Before co-founding Mitchell Ventures with him, I worked for a tech giant, specializing in financial security, dissecting fraud like this for breakfast. He didn't stand a chance. The real-time financial interface blinks to life, and I watch James make one last desperate attempt to move the remaining funds overseas. $500,000. A pitiful lifeline. Not so fast, James. I activate the security override, a protocol I designed years ago, and within seconds a red alert pops up. Transaction failed. Account temporarily locked. My phone buzzes, Ethan's name lighting the screen. Daria, he says, his voice ringing with excitement. I just got confirmation from the SEC. They've received all the documents you sent. They're launching an immediate investigation. The IRS is involved, too. James won't escape this. I tap my pen lightly against the desk, the faint rhythm syncing with the city's pulse beyond the window. Good, I reply, calm as ever. I want them to scrutinize every transaction, every contract he's signed in the past 2 years. Ethan chuckles. They won't let him off the hook. I end the call, the wine glass cool in my hand, and feel an unusual peace settle over me. His empire's crumbling, and I'm the one holding the hammer. Somewhere across town, James stumbles out of a luxury hotel elevator, his tie loosened, his face pale from exhaustion, a man unraveling thread by thread. I don't need to see it to know it's happening. I can picture him, 42 and frantic, hands trembling as he pulls out his phone, dialing numbers that won't answer. His personal attorney, gone silent. His financial advisor, cut off. Business partners, all withdrawing like rats from a flood. I lean back in my chair. The city lights a steady glow beyond the glass, and imagine the crushing pressure tightening around his chest as he rushes through the hotel's back entrance. A sleek black car waits, engine humming, and he throws himself into the back seat, slamming the door shut. I need a flight to Switzerland. Immediately, he snaps, voice hoarse. The driver glances at the rearview mirror, calm as stone. Mr. Carter, I think you should check the news before heading to the airport. James frowns, fumbling with his phone, and opens his banking app. A notification flares. Account frozen. Contact your bank for further details. His breathing grows shallow, panicked, and he tries another login, a secret account, one he thought I'd never find. Account locked under financial investigation order. He slams his fist against the seat, a guttural sound escaping him, every escape route severed by the system I built. Meanwhile, Nicole's on her own trajectory, walking briskly down a sidewalk, clutching her handbag like a shield, her fingers trembling as she dials James's number, straight to voicemail. A taxi pulls up, and she climbs in, voice tight. JFK Airport. Her phone vibrates before the car moves, a message from her attorney. Nicole, if you're tied to Carter's accounts, cooperate with the authorities. The FBI's involved. Cold sweat beads on her forehead, and her eyes dart to another message. The one she sent me hours ago, a desperate plea. She presses call, her voice shaking when I answer. Daria, I have information on James. I'm willing to turn over everything, as long as I get protection. I let the silence stretch, my tone calm, but razor sharp when I finally speak. Good. Send me everything, and don't even think about running. I'll know. She trembles as I hang up, and I smirk, sipping my wine. They're scrambling, but I'm still one step ahead. I step into the grand hall of the Manhattan Hotel, the annual financial summit in full swing, the long carpeted aisle stretching before me like a runway to the speaker stage. All eyes turn my way, executives, investors, reporters, and I feel the weight of their curiosity, their tension, as my heels sink into the plush red. I'm no longer Mrs. Carter, the shadow behind James. I'm Daria Mitchell, 38 and unyielding, and today I'll tear down everything he built on lies. The massive LED screen behind me lights up with bold words. The truth about Mitchell Ventures, what the market needs to know. The crowd falls silent, a ripple of glances exchanged, and I take the podium, hands resting on the cold wooden surface, the spotlight catching my eyes. Fierce, unflinching. I'm sure you've all seen the headlines, I begin, my voice strong and unwavering, cutting through the hush. What we're witnessing isn't just the downfall of one man. It's a lesson in greed and deception. I pause, letting the words settle, then continue. Mitchell Ventures was once a powerhouse, but in days, its value has plummeted. Why? The screen shifts, displaying internal emails, falsified reports, shady transactions. My evidence, undeniable. Because James Carter lied to all of us. He manipulated the company's valuation for personal gain, used investment funds to conceal illegal cash flows, and orchestrated a sale based on fraudulent numbers. Murmurs ripple through the room, phones lighting up as attendees verify what I've laid bare. I lock eyes with Charles Grayson, 60, in the front row, an investor who once voiced doubts to me. Mr. Grayson, I call, the hall stilling again. You've received the full financial report on Mitchell Ventures' true standing. Can you confirm what I've stated? He straightens, adjusts his tie, and nods firmly. Everything Ms. Mitchell has said is accurate. The murmurs grow louder, and I press on. Anyone who's done business with Mitchell Ventures has the right to ask, can we trust this company? Can we allow someone like James to keep manipulating the market? I scan the room, my gaze steady. I don't think so. The nods start, slow, then certain, and I step back, a faint smirk playing on my lips. His empire's not just falling, it's being erased. I walk into the boardroom of Mitchell Ventures, the marble floor cool beneath my heels, their powerful clicks echoing off the walls as shareholders take their seats. Familiar faces mixed with those who once sided with James, their eyes now brimming with curiosity and unease. The air hangs heavy, thick with the scent of coffee and the tension of a company teetering on collapse, but I carry none of their doubt. I sit in the chair James once treated like a throne, my dark dress stark against its leather, and tap my pen lightly against the table, letting the silence stretch until it's almost unbearable. Behind me, the screen lights up, displaying a list of names, board members marked for removal, and I begin, my voice calm, yet razor sharp. We have a lot to address today, so I'll get straight to the point. James Carter deceived every single one of us. A wave of whispers spreads through the room, but I press on, each word deliberate. He attempted to sell this company without the board's consent. But what he didn't realize was that I'd already secured enough shares to take full control. 60%. The whispers grow sharper, a few of James's old allies, exchanging worried glances, and I lean back, locking eyes with each person present. Anyone tied to him will no longer hold power here, I say, tapping a command on my tablet. The screen shifts again. A new logo blazes to life. Phoenix Innovation Group. Mitchell Ventures died with James, I continue, my tone steady, unwavering. But from its ashes, we'll build something stronger. The room falls silent, stunned, the weight of my words sinking in. Charles Grayson, silver-haired and skeptical, speaks from the far end. Daria, are you certain this change will lead to success? The market's still shaken. I smile, locking eyes with him, my voice brimming with confidence. I'm not certain. I'm sure. The stillness breaks as nods ripple through the group, and I outline my vision. A focus on technology and cybersecurity, sectors James always underestimated, but ones I've mastered. I've secured partnerships to fund this transition, I add, and anyone staying will commit to this future. The vote begins, swift and decisive. Phoenix Innovation Group is born. James thought he could take everything from me, but I've taken it all back, and then some. I stand in my new office at Phoenix Innovation Group, floor-to-ceiling windows framing the vast Manhattan skyline, the city lights pulsing below like a heartbeat I've learned to command. My phone buzzes, a message from Ryan Hayes lighting the screen. James Carter was arrested this morning at a private airport in Miami. Tried fleeing to South America with a fake passport. No way out. I take a sip of coffee, the warmth seeping into my hands, and let the words settle. James in handcuffs, caught in the blinding flashes of news cameras. A fitting end for a man who thought he could cheat the system. Another message pops up, an unknown number. I should never have trusted him. I should have known he couldn't protect me. But now, it's too late. Nicole. I let it fade into oblivion, not worth my time, and open my laptop instead, the latest financial report glowing bright. Phoenix stock has soared 150% in 3 months. Contracts pouring in from the world's largest funds. The media is already calling me the woman behind the new tech revolution, a title I've earned not just by dismantling James, but by rebuilding stronger. He thought he could destroy me, leave me with nothing, but he forgot. I don't just know revenge. I know how to rise. I step toward the window, the coffee cup warm in my palm, and gaze at the horizon stretching endless before me. Justice isn't about tearing down a betrayer. It's about forging something unbreakable from the ashes, letting the truth surface like water through stone. James lost everything because he lost trust, the one currency no money can buy back. I didn't just reclaim my company, I built an empire, and the lesson cuts deep. The best revenge isn't destruction. It's success that outshines every lie. The battle's over, but this is just the beginning. What if the person you've always been compared to, the one who shines brightest in every room, has no idea who you are? I leaned against the kitchen counter, fingers curled around a cold soda can, the fizz hissing softly as my brother Damian held court in our family's suburban living room. Easter decorations, pastel flowers, and ceramic bunnies cluttered the space, but the air felt heavy, charged with something sharper than holiday cheer. At 32, I'd grown used to fading into the background at these gatherings, but tonight, Damian's gaze found me, and I knew what was coming. His words, sharp as a blade, were about to cut deeper than ever, and I wondered if he'd ever suspect the secret I carried, a truth so vast it could unravel his entire world. The living room buzzed with relatives, their laughter bouncing off the walls as Damian, mid-30s and polished in a tailored blazer, described his latest prize, an $80,000 Tesla, sleek and gleaming in his driveway 3 miles away. "It's the future," he said, voice loud enough to drown out the clinking of wine glasses. His eyes flicked to me, a smug glint in them. Still renting, Evelyn? At your age, throwing money at landlords? The room erupted in chuckles, aunts and cousins glancing my way with pity or amusement. My chest tightened, a familiar ache blooming beneath my ribs. I forced a smile, lips pressed thin, and took a sip of soda, the cold bubbles sharp against my tongue. In our family, success was a performance, and Damian was the star, always had been. I was the quiet one, the renter, the disappointment. I clutched the can tighter, its aluminum denting slightly under my grip, and let the moment pass. Damian wasn't done. As the chatter resumed, he sauntered closer, leaning against the counter with that infuriating grin. "You really should do better, sis," he said, loud enough for me alone, his breath tinged with the Merlot he'd been sipping. "The family's embarrassed by you." My jaw clenched, a tremor of anger mixing with hurt. I wanted to snap back, to tell him he had no idea what I'd built, but I swallowed the words. "What do you mean?" I asked, voice steady despite the heat rising in my cheeks. He rolled his eyes. "That cramped 800-square-foot apartment? You own nothing. Grandpa left me everything, and I made something of it. You're stuck playing small." He flicked imaginary dust off his $500 blazer, dismissing me. My nails bit into my palms, but I kept my face calm, a mask I'd perfected over the years. I grabbed my coat from the rack, nodded politely, and slipped out, the April air cool against my burning skin. Enough was enough. I drove the 10 miles back to my apartment in silence, the city lights blurring through my windshield like scattered stars. My heart pounded. Damian's words echoing, embarrassed, nothing, small. Yet beneath the sting, something stirred. Determination, hard and unyielding. I pulled into the parking garage of my high-rise, the lobby's marble floor gleaming under soft lights. Upon the 10th floor, I unlocked my door and flicked on a switch, the room bathing in a warm glow. My apartment was modest, yes, but deliberate, a custom-made walnut table, a $5,000 painting by a rising Chicago artist, each piece chosen for quality over flash. I set my purse on the counter, the leather soft against my fingers, and opened my sleek silver laptop. A spreadsheet loaded, rows of figures scrolling by, properties in Denver, vineyards in California, assets worth $10 million. My eyes scanned the numbers, confirming everything was in order. I closed the laptop with a firm click, my pulse steadying. Let Damian mock me for renting. Let them all think what they want. They had no idea what I truly owned, and for now, that was my power. I stood in the quiet, the city's hum faint beyond my windows, and felt a resolve settle deep in my bones. This was only the beginning. How does a child learn to thrive in someone else's shadow? As I stood in my apartment's quiet, the city's pulse faint beyond the glass, I closed my eyes, and memories flickered like old film reels. At 32, I carried the weight of a childhood where I was always second, my brother Damian, the golden child who soaked up every spotlight. Those early years, etched in my bones, weren't just scars. They were the forge that shaped my silent ambition, the spark that lit a fire no one saw coming. I was 8, Damian 10, in our suburban Ohio home, its beige walls lined with family photos that seemed to feature only him. He stood in a $200 suit, tie knotted by Mom, while I lingered in second-hand jeans, clutching a worn library book. "Look at our little man," Dad said, polishing Damian's dress shoes until they gleamed. I hovered by the staircase hoping for a glance, but their eyes stayed on him, his grades, his charm, his potential. "Stay out of the way, Evelyn," Mom murmured, her voice soft but firm. I nodded, retreating to my room where I traced the book's pages, promising myself I'd build something they couldn't ignore. Each slight, each overlooked moment taught me to be quiet, to save my energy for a future I could control. Years later, when Grandpa died, the ground shifted beneath us. I was 20, sitting in a lawyer's office in Cleveland, the air thick with the scent of old paper. The will was read. Damian, at 22, inherited properties, stocks, and a $2 million trust fund. I got nothing, not a trinket, not a note. Damian's smirk cut deeper than the words, his feigned solemnity a thin veil. I didn't cry, though my throat burned. Outside in the parking lot, I stared at the gray sky, the weight of exclusion heavy but clarifying. I wouldn't beg for scraps. I'd make my way, and it would be bigger than their handouts. That resolve carried me through my 20s. I lived in a 500 a month studio, its walls thin enough to hear neighbors' arguments, and worked nights at a diner, the grease clinging to my skin. By day, I haunted libraries, devouring books on finance, real estate, anything to outsmart the system. My first move was a $100,000 fixer-upper in a Columbus neighborhood poised for growth. I scraped together a down payment, renovated it with borrowed tools, and sold it for a $30,000 profit. Then another and another, each deal sharper, each dollar saved. I studied market trends, memorized zoning laws, and built a portfolio in the shadows. No one knew, not Mom, not Damian, not the relatives who still asked, "When are you going to settle down, Evelyn?" I'd smile, say soon, and keep moving. And those years of hustle weren't glamorous, but they were mine. Each small victory, a signed deed, a bank balance ticking upward, felt like reclaiming a piece of myself. I learned to be patient, to let my work speak when the time was right. As I opened my eyes in my apartment, the past faded, but its lessons lingered. The fire from those slights, that will, those lonely nights, still burned. I wasn't done proving them wrong, not by a long shot. What does it feel like to be erased by the people who should know you best? As I stood in the quiet of my apartment, the echo of my past victories still warming my chest, a new storm was brewing. The fire I'd kindled in those lonely years of hustle was mine alone. But now Damian's voice, sharp, relentless, was weaving a narrative that painted me as a failure. At 32, I'd learned to shrug off his taunts, but when my phone began to hum with messages from cousins and aunts, their pity slicing through the screen, I felt the walls of my world closing in. This wasn't just a sibling spat anymore. It was a campaign to bury me. It started subtly, a week after Easter, with a text from my cousin Lena in Pittsburgh. "Evelyn, you okay? Heard you're in debt." I stared at the words, my thumb hovering over the reply. Debt? The idea was laughable. My portfolio spanned 8 states, $10 million in assets. But the rumor stung. Then came a call from Aunt Marie, her voice dripping with concern. "Damian says you're struggling, honey. Renting because you can't afford a house?" I gripped the phone, the plastic creaking. "I'm fine," I said. My tone clipped and hung up before her questions could dig deeper. Each message, each call, was a pinprick, a reminder of how easily my family swallowed Damian's lies. He told them I owed $50,000, that I was dodging creditors, even hinting I was tangled in something shady. In our family, gossip stuck like tar, and my silence only fueled it. The worst came from Mom. I was slicing apples in my kitchen, the knife's rhythm steadying my nerves, when her call broke the quiet. "Evelyn, you need to clear things up," she said, her voice tight with disappointment. "Damian says you're in trouble. Why can't you just be honest?" The apple's flesh gleamed under the blade, and I paused, my pulse thudding in my ears. Honest? She'd never asked about my life, never noticed the deals I'd closed or the libraries I'd funded. "I'm fine, Mom," I said, each word a stone. She sighed, a sound I knew too well. Damian was the star, and I was the shadow, always to blame. I ended the call, the silence heavier than before. My kitchen, with its polished granite and faint scent of cinnamon, felt like a fortress, but even here, their judgment seeped in. I sat on my couch, the leather cool against my skin, and let the rumors swirl in my mind. Damian's stories weren't just cruel, they were strategic, a way to keep me small while he shone. I remembered Mom's voice from childhood, always praising him first, and how I'd learned to bottle my hurt. Now, at 32, that hurt was a spark, igniting a resolve to stay above their game. I wouldn't defend myself to people who'd never seen me. Let them whisper about my supposed $50,000 debt, my failure to buy a home. My truth didn't need their approval. I glanced at the city skyline beyond my window, its lights steady and unyielding, and felt my isolation sharpen into strength. Damian could rally the family against me, but I'd already built a world they couldn't touch. This was their loss, not mine, and I'd prove it, not with words, but with what came next. How do you reclaim a story that's been twisted against you? After weeks of dodging my family's whispers, their pitying texts painting me as a broke dreamer, I felt a quiet fire steadying my core. At 32, I'd built a world beyond their reach, and Damian's rumors only sharpened my focus. My kitchen, still fragrant with the apples I'd sliced during Mom's call, was no longer just a refuge. It was a command center. As May's light spilled through my windows, I knew it was time to act, to let my moves speak louder than their lies. The first hint of that shift came with an envelope, its wax seal gleaming, and a drive that would rewrite my past. One evening, my buzzer rang, sharp and unexpected. The camera feed showed Damian, his polished loafers tapping impatiently. I opened the door and he strode in, his gaze sweeping my living room like a critic sizing up a stage. "Nice place," he said, sarcasm dripping, though his eyes lingered on the walnut bookshelf I'd commissioned for $2,000. He spotted a cream envelope on my counter, its gold lettering catching the light. "What's this?" he asked, snatching it up. "A gala? You?" The invitation congratulated me on a $100,000 donation to fund community libraries, an award I'd nearly declined to avoid attention. His laugh was sharp, like glass cracking. "Who'd you scam for that, Evelyn?" My pulse quickened, but I shrugged, voice cool as marble. "Some event for donors." He smirked, tossing the envelope down. "Doesn't matter anyway." I met his gaze, steady and unyielding, and saw a flicker of confusion, maybe even jealousy. "It's not your business," I said, and for once he didn't push. He left with a curt nod, but that moment marked a shift. I wouldn't explain myself, not yet. My actions would do the talking. Days later, I drove 20 miles to our old suburban neighborhood, the streets familiar yet strange, like a half-remembered dream. The trees were taller, their leaves brushing the sky, but the sidewalks bore cracks I knew by heart. I parked outside our childhood home, a tired two-story with peeling paint and a for sale sign staked in the 0.5-acre lawn. Memories flooded back, Dad mowing the grass, his laughter reserved for Damian, me hiding in my room, sketching plans for a future they couldn't see. The house had been my cage, a place where I'd felt invisible, but now it called to me. I stood on the lawn, the grass damp under my sneakers, and dialed the number on the sign. "I'd like to make an offer," I said to the agent, my voice calm. "Full cash, $400,000 through a holding company." The deal closed in days, no fanfare, just a signature on a dotted line. I'd reclaimed the setting of so many hurts, not to live in it, but to own it, to rewrite its story as mine. As I drove back, the rearview mirror framed the house shrinking into the distance, its dusty windows glinting in the sun. My chest felt lighter, as if I'd shed a weight I hadn't named. The gala invitation still sat on my counter, a quiet testament to my impact, and now this house, a symbol of my past, belonged to me. Damian could spread his lies, Mom could echo them, but I was done being their shadow. My moves were deliberate, each one a brick in the empire I'd built without their applause. The city skyline loomed ahead, its steel and glass a mirror to my resolve. I gripped the steering wheel, the leather warm under my palms, and knew the next steps would shake their world. For the first time, I wasn't just surviving their judgment, I was rewriting the rules. What happens when the truth you've held close finally cracks open? After reclaiming my childhood home, it's a quiet victory in my hands. I felt the ground shift beneath me. At 32, I'd carved my path through years of silence, but Damian's lies, his rumors of my failure, still lingered like smoke. The $400,000 house and the gala award were my anchors, proof of a life he couldn't fathom. Yet, as June's heat pressed against my city, a reckoning loomed. My phone's chime, sharp and insistent, pulled me into a storm I hadn't foreseen, one that would strip Damian bare and force our truths into the light. The first ripples came through my finance consultancy, whispers from colleagues about Damian's latest venture, a high-end complex 15 miles outside downtown. Word was it was crumbling. Zoning laws blocked construction, environmental lawsuits piled up, and investors were bailing. I sat at my desk, the air conditioning humming, and read an email from a partner. Damian had borrowed $300,000 to keep up appearances, buying his wife a diamond necklace that glittered on her Instagram. His parties, his $100,000 sports car, his first-class flights, they were a facade, a tightrope fraying under his weight. I traced the edge of my coffee mug, its ceramic cool, and felt a strange pang. He was my brother, but his pride was a wildfire, burning everything it touched. I pushed the thought aside, focusing on my work, deals in Seattle, a vineyard expansion, but the rumors kept circling, a vulture's shadow over his empire. Then came the call that changed everything. My property manager, her voice crisp over the line, asked if I was aware of a delinquent account. "The estate in the suburbs, ma'am," she said. "Payments are 3 months behind." My breath caught. Years ago, I'd bought a cluster of luxury homes through a trust, a $5 million portfolio I rarely thought about, leaving management to her team. Now she confirmed the address. Damian's $2 million mansion, his pride and joy, was mine. He'd been paying rent to my trust, oblivious. I stared out my window, the skyline jagged against a pink dusk, and felt my heart thump. "No special treatment," I said, voice steady. "Follow standard procedure." Hanging up, I gripped the phone, a mix of justice and guilt swirling in my chest. Damian had mocked me for renting, but he was the tenant, and now the truth would hit him like a freight train. He came to me days later, a hurricane in a $1,000 suit. My buzzer rang, and I opened the door to find him red-faced, papers crumpled in his fist. "Is this a joke?" he roared, shoving the documents at me. "You own my house? My entire estate?" I stepped back, letting him storm into my living room, his cologne sharp in the air. The papers listed my trust as the landlord, a fact he'd uncovered through a desperate call to the bank. "I'm not sure what you're talking about," I said evenly, folding my arms. He shook, fury and disbelief warring in his eyes. "You lied, Evelyn! You pretended to be broke, renting." I cut him off, voice like steel. "I never pretended. You assumed." He threw the papers onto my coffee table, the glass rattling. "So what now? You'll evict me?" His sarcasm masked fear, and I saw it, the crack in his armor. My lips curved into a grim smile. "I haven't decided yet," I said softly. He glared, chest heaving, and for once he had no retort. The air crackled, our roles reversed in a single breath. The fallout came fast. Mom called the next day, her voice quivering over the phone. "How could you do this to Damian?" she demanded. "He's your brother." I pressed the receiver to my ear, my kitchen's granite cold under my elbow. "What did he tell you?" I asked. "That you're ruining him," she snapped. "You made him borrow money he couldn't repay." My teeth clenched. Damian had spun the story again, painting me as the villain. "He borrowed that $300,000 himself, Mom," I said, voice trembling. "I had nothing to do with it." She huffed, unconvinced. "You're always trying to make him look bad, Evelyn." I hung up, the silence deafening. Outside, the city hummed, indifferent to my family's betrayal. I'd won, but the victory tasted bitter. Damian's world was collapsing, and I stood at its edge, holding the truth that could break or remake us both. What does freedom taste like after years of carrying others' lies? The truth had shattered Damian's world. My ownership of his $2 million mansion laid bare, his accusations crumbling under my calm resolve. At 32, I'd stood firm as Mom's blame echoed his, but their words no longer bound me. In July, I boarded a plane to Italy, seeking air untainted by family drama. As the ocean stretched below, I felt the weight of their judgment lift, replaced by a quiet certainty. My empire, built in the shadows, was mine to savor, and Damian's fall, though painful, was his to face. Yet a question lingered. Could a single crack in his pride open a door to something new? I landed in a sun-kissed villa 50 miles from Florence, its stone terrace overlooking rows of grapevines that shimmered under a golden haze. This was Evelyn Estates, established in 2009, a $3 million vineyard I'd nurtured discreetly. I walked the paths, soil rich beneath my sandals, and spoke with workers who knew me as the investor who paid fairly. One afternoon, I visited a museum I was funding, its $200,000 renovation, preserving local artifacts. The architect's warm handshake grounded me. Here, my work mattered without fanfare. Standing among dusty relics, I felt untethered from Mom's accusations, Damian's sneers. The vines, the museum, they were my truth, not a stage for applause. Under Italy's wide sky, I breathed deeply, the air sweet with possibility, and knew I'd built a life that needed no one's nod. Back in the States, Damian's collapse unfolded like a slow-motion crash. I caught sight of him one morning in a Cleveland cafe, 10 miles from my city, hunched over a laptop, his $1,000 suits traded for a wrinkled polo. His eyes were puffy, his posture broken, jobless, his wife gone, her Instagram now bare of diamonds. Gossip reached me. His firm had sacked him for diverting $500,000 in client funds, and lawsuits loomed. He'd been evicted, and the mansion's locks had been changed. I slipped out before he saw me, a pang of guilt tugging at my chest. He was my brother, but his choices, pride over humility, had carved this path. I let the moment pass, the cafe's coffee scent fading as I walked away. The family dinner came weeks later, at Mom's cramped suburban house, its air thick with nostalgia and tension. I arrived, the table set with her old china, but Damian stumbled in late, red-eyed, trembling. He pointed at me, voice shaking. "You betrayed me, Evelyn. You destroyed my life." Relatives gasped, forks pausing midair. Mom's eyes welled, torn between us. I set my napkin down, heart pounding but voice steady. "You did that yourself, Damian. You stole from your firm, defaulted on your lease." He slammed the table, silverware clattering. "You're jealous!" I stood, refusing his trap. "I'm done," I said, and left, the door's click final. The night air cooled my skin, and I drove away, head high, no longer their scapegoat. Then a letter arrived, its envelope scrawled with Damian's handwriting. "Evelyn, I didn't see you. I'm sorry," it read, simple and shaky. My breath caught, tears pricking unexpectedly. A second letter followed, asking to meet, no excuses, just a plea. I sat at my desk, the city's hum soft beyond my window, and read it again, searching for hidden motives. It felt genuine, a crack in his armor. I tucked it away, heart heavy with years of hurt, but stirred by hope. Months later, I texted him, "Coffee, next week." Not to erase the past, but to test if healing was possible. My phone buzzed. A $50,000 profit from my French orchard, another thread in my quiet empire. I smiled, the skyline glittering beyond my glass. Damian faced his crossroads. I'd chosen mine. For now, I live fully. My roots deep. My story enough. At 32, I, Evelyn, learned that true strength blooms in silence, not in the clamor of others' approval. Damian's fall, his $2 million mansion revealed as mine, taught me that pride blinds, but resilience sees clearly. Each rumor he spread, each family slight, pushed me to build my $10 million empire without their gaze. In Italy's vineyards, I found peace, my roots deeper than their judgments. His apology, a fragile seed, showed me that forgiveness doesn't erase pain, but can lighten it. I learned to live for myself. My quiet triumphs enough, no matter who sees them.